Welcome back to Tri-City Sports Now. Our thanks to Julian Lane. Just committed. The official signing date is Wednesday, and I guess there was a little jump there. I know that he had some interest from Southern Conference schools, but I guess they had not given him a scholarship. He said that only Morehead State had, but still, that's a nice player for ETSU to pick up. I really believe that even if the only scholarship was Morehead State, my eye test, what I saw on the high school gridiron, I know it's 3A football, but I like Julian Lane. And I don't want to he was being very humble. He did not want to say, oh, yeah, I'm not going in, expecting big head going in to start right away. And, yeah, he should not. But ETSU needs defensive backs, and so getting a good safety out of Wes Green, who certainly caught as many balls as a center fielder, playing defensive back this year for the Buffs, I thought was, I think that's a positive and such. So anyway, by the way, happy birthday to Hammerin' Hank Aaron. Turns 84. We heard so much talk before the Super Bowl. Is Tom Brady the greatest team athlete ever? And supposedly if he had won the game, then he would have overtaken Michael Jordan. At least that would have been the hot take. I don't know. I still, when I look at, greatest team athlete, can we consider, players such as, and not limited to, in basketball, not just MJ, but Wilt Chamberlain, the stats that he put up, like I said, last year, I think 62 with the Warriors, averaging 48 and a half minutes, averaging 50 points a game. Incredible. A lot of people, they want to say, well, what about the championships and all this? That's, I think, more of a modern type of barometer for greatness. Now, I'll give you an example. I know the movie Cobb, with Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Wuhl, is said, back in the 90s, it is said by biographers of Ty Cobb to be not a great representative historical piece of his life. It is based on some dealings that Al Stump, a sports writer who had done several pieces and wrote a book with Ty Cobb back in the day, and Stump didn't like Cobb. It was just that simple. And he likely embellished some of the hate and racism of Cobb. However, and this should be mentioned, and speaking of which, I actually have a picture of Cobb and Aaron meeting each other back in the 50s, and Cobb giving Hank Aaron batting tips. And in the picture, as well as Chuck Tanner, who would go on to manage the Atlanta Braves and win a world championship. He was the last manager to win a world championship with the Pirates, actually, way back in 1979. But anyway, where I'm going with all of this is it's Hank Aaron's birthday, and I wanted to say that when you look at team accomplishments, if you look at that movie Cobb, there's this scene in it, and all the sports writers are around, who's the greatest baseball player of all time? And everybody is saying, oh, it's Ty Cobb, it's Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb never won a world championship. Now, this is also 1960 era and all this. I kind of think that it wasn't until the Super Bowl era, and really they started saying things like Joe Montana, 4 Super Bowls, greatest quarterback ever. Terry Bradshaw, first quarterback to win 3, then 4 Super Bowls. That they really started talking about rings. And then Michael Jordan with that dynasty also. But I guess, the idea of Chamberlain versus Bill Russell. Russell won all the rings, and there was some talk about that, but he wasn't the offensive player that Chamberlain was. Didn't have the stats. Somewhere along the way, individual stats were diminished for total team championships. Now, I also think in the free agency period, that idea of championships being the value of an athlete, well, I'm more apt to be impressed with Michael Jordan going to a sad sack Chicago Bulls franchise and winning 6 championships there, or for that matter, Tom Brady going to a sad sack New England Patriots franchise and doing the same. And say the Patriots are sad sack. They were 5-11 the year before he took them to the Super Bowl. Anyway, point being that those are championship. I mean, I think they built around you. I'm less impressed with LeBron James making the decision to play on an already strong team and not be the centerpiece, but more of the final part on an already strong team. What does that mean? I'm going as a free agent to a strong team. I don't think that winning a championship on the James legacy is as great as, say, a Michael Jordan, a Tom Brady. I don't. Historically, if we're going to talk about, but I get to this, and it's, if you want to talk about greatest team athlete, how about Hank Aaron? Still to this day, the all-time leader in RBIs, only 7 off of the all-time home run record, and a lot of people think that Barry Bonds, I mean, let's face it, they think his 762 is tainted. Hank Aaron, greatest team athlete of all time? Why not? Had to deal with the racism of breaking Babe Ruth's home run record. Read about the hate mail. Also got a lot of support. That should be mentioned as well. You know, the 2 people coming out of the stands to pat him on the back as soon as he hit 715. Let's face facts. I mean, there was, you know. But why not Hank Aaron? Just because he only won the 1 world championship? I don't know. I could see that. Obviously, such an argument is always going to be subjective. How about Babe Ruth? You're looking at titles. He won 7 World Series. Admittedly, there were only 16 teams back then. So is that less impressive than, say, winning the Super Bowl in a 32-team league? Or I guess the first year. Was the first year Brady was in the league? First year Brady was in the league, they had 31. When did the Texans come in? I want to say, Texans come in 2001? Or was it 2002? I'm trying to recall. I think it was 2001. So, yeah, Tom Brady's been around so long, he can remember when there were only 31 teams in the NFL. All right. Anyway, you have to consider things of that nature. I do get that, but Hank Aaron, happy birthday. And maybe he ought to be considered as greatest team athlete. Certainly a complete player, both offensively and defensively. And was a 5-tool player by any stretch of the imagination. Steve Forbes will join me in about 10 minutes here talking about the red-hot ETSU Buccaneers, but certainly we want to talk more about the Super Bowl. You know, right before the Super Bowl, there was a big story that came out about the Tennessee Volunteers would have 61 players since the merger in the Super Bowl era, and that was the second most in all of college football at that time, behind only Miami, who had 62 players, I believe. And I know there was this feeling at the time that, well, that means that Tennessee hasn't had the good coaches. And you can see where this goes, where the belief after 10 years of no SEC East titles, where for the fan base, they use that as somewhat propaganda, saying, we're still good, we're still good, we're still good, we've had the players. Vols are still good, Vols are still good, Vols are still good. They've had the players, they just haven't had the coaches. Even though both John Majors and, for that matter, Phil Fulmer have both won national championships. I don't know. One thing that the SEC countries, and for that matter, the All for Tennessees, that picked up on this didn't necessarily capitalize on was the fact that they didn't say who those players were that made the Super Bowl out of Tennessee. So I did and started looking this up, and I found from last year, dating all the former Vols in the Super Bowl, and UT put this out. Now, here's the problem with this that I see. Not every, I mean, you want to talk about the four of these players are punters. I'm not saying that that's not important, but I'm not sure that Ron Whidbey was absolutely the reason why the Dallas Cowboys won Super Bowl VI. I'm not sure that, for that matter, Craig Colquitt, that the Steelers, if they have another punter, they don't win 4 Super Bowls in the 70s. I found this interesting. There was a 5-year gap from 72 to 77 where there were no Vols in the Super Bowl. And to me, what that speaks of is the fact that Tennessee, you know, you're thinking about who goes to the Super Bowl. By the way, Bill Anderson was in Super Bowl I with the Packers, but somehow they do this post-merger. He was the only Vol pre-merger in the Super Bowl. The first 4 Super Bowls was Bill Anderson. But anyway, just getting a lot of these players were actually, who were in the NFL, or, you know, this is when Tennessee, and the SEC was still not fully integrated until 1972. And there was a gap of 72 to 77 where there were no Vols in the Super Bowl. And I think that's probably a reason for that. Somewhat disgracefully, yes, but nevertheless. Also, it's kind of interesting, Hacksaw Reynolds is one of the players, and he did not make the Super Bowl until he was an aged vet. Same thing for that matter for, say, Bill Bates. He didn't make it until the end of his career. A lot of for every Peyton Manning and for every Reggie White, you're going to have let's say a Craig Pookie. Played for the 49ers, Super Bowl 16. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. You know, not exactly the most telling player. The other thing that I don't like about this list is that, yeah, it does give credit to someone like a Ron Whidbey, but not to a Jason Witten, who's never been in the Super Bowl. Looks like a lot of the players are certainly worthy. I mean, look, Peyton Manning, obviously, better or worse, Leonard Little, Jamal Lewis, we're getting that. Britton Colquitt and Craig Colquitt, fathers and sons who played in the Super Bowl from Tennessee. That's kind of fun to note. Marcus Nash, this sort of thing. Raleigh McKenzie. But Tim McGee, certainly, Willie Gault, Stanley Morgan, these are great players. But like I said, there are also some guys, Steve Kiner, Hee-Haw Kiner. Ole Miss played like mules, 38-0. Well, Kiner played for the Cowboys in Super Bowl V. He had a relatively short career in the NFL. Great Vol, maybe not such a great pro, and yet he's on the list over Jason Witten, someone like that. Pat Ryan, Bobby Scott, whoever. That's the failing of a list like this, and that's one of the reasons why I say that it should probably be taken when you see this with a grain of salt. And if you don't believe me, then just consider this. Why did Miami rank ahead of Tennessee? Let's just go from that perspective. Well, the primary reason, if you really want to go to, you start thinking Miami, you start thinking quarterbacks, and yeah, there are the Ray Lewises and the Michael Irvins, but really only one great Miami quarterback, Jim Kelly, was known for going to the Super Bowl. But Bernie Kosar did as a backup with the Dallas Cowboys, but not as an All-Pro with the Browns. Kosar got some mop-up duty back in Super Bowl 27. I think it was Super Bowl 27. And maybe it was 28, one of those two, against the Bills. Got some mop-up duty. So he became the 62nd Miami Hurricane, one more than the Vols, to play in the Super Bowl. That's the difference. How big is that, really? I mean, you don't get a Vinny Testaverde for credit, but you do. A quarterback that falls on the ball at the end, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I just thought it was something, got a lot of pub, but something of an overrated stat. And to start criticizing the coaches of Tennessee, I don't know, because like I said, it gives a lot of credit for having 4 punters, but not for Jason Witten. Anyway, Steve Forbes knows something about winning games. He's won 15 in a row. He joins me, head coach of the ETSU men's basketball team, after this.
WBMB Irwin.